Welcome to Snowmobile Sessions Live on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms. It's the #1 destination to learn about snowmobiling, network with other sledders, and have an awesome time doing it. We'll meet other snowmobilers that share your passion and show your fan photos along the way. Snowmobile Sessions Live. Enjoy the ride.
Now that's a little bit better. We're here. It's episode 108 with the man, the legend. Lepoinski said it best in the chat right now. He said it's like having Evel Knievel on the show. I think that's awesome.
How
are you, Levi?
I'm doing great. Doing great. I'm like excited. It's starting to get colder outside. You know, one of the lakes that I drive by from my shop to my house was starting to get some ice on it. And I was thinking, shoot, it ain't going to be long. We're going to be out riding.
Oh, absolutely. So we had quite a good chat at Heydays. Have you done much since then as far as season prep and planning goes?
Yeah, it's been a very busy couple months since Heydays. We're working on 2 different Red Bull projects for this winter. So one of them was, I don't want to say pretty well dialed. I was supposed to do it last end of season, and it got pushed to this year. So that one's pretty dialed. I was actually working on it today. And then the other one was a fresh one, and it's a totally different concept. So that one was a little more involved. So I've done a handful of different test sessions, and it involves another Red Bull athlete. So it'll be pretty fun once it comes out. I think that one will be a first part of February is when we're going to shoot it. So I would guess within a month or so after that is when they will probably release the content and whatnot.
With Red Bull, do you come up with the ideas for the stunts, or do they feed them to you, or is it kind of a collaboration?
Yeah, I would say collaboration, but most times the different projects that we do, I'll like each year I have a call with the guys at Red Bull, and they just say, what do you want to do? And then I pitch them on different ideas. I have like a book of ideas, and I just say like, this would be really cool, or this would be fun, or, you know, kind of go down that road. And they usually like give me feedback and go, that would be cool. We could do that here. It'd be neat to do it here. Have you thought about doing that with another athlete? And kind of evolves from there. And there's a couple Red Bull ones this winter that we're working on, and then I've got one that is potentially, I've got a third one that might happen a little bit later. So it's pretty cool. It's exciting because like I get asked a lot, you know, are you gonna do another world record jump, or are you gonna do a triple backflip? And I'm like, no, those days are behind me. I just call them age-appropriate projects now. So, so it's still fun. It's fun for me to like what I really enjoy about the different projects is one, figuring out how to do it, how to test it, and how to like put it all together, you know, in a safe manner and hopefully in a cool way so that people enjoy it.
Right on. Couple of questions. Jacob Massart says, how much time does it usually take to fill a Red Bull stunt? Like, talk about your planning to pre-prep of the event to actually executing it.
Yeah, I mean, it you know, that changes with what kind of project it is. So I'll give an example. When we did urban snowmobiling, the one when I was in St. Paul running around, that one was like the conversation, you know, was kind of started in the winter before. And then over the summer months, I will prep it. So, you know, the conversation starts for urban snowmobiling. It's like, yes, we're in, then we have to go down and you make a wish list of like, here's the different stunts, the different things you can do. So we went down to St. Paul And I had a local guy kind of say, like, here's different spots. You want to check this out? This might work. And I would go to them all and I'd be like, yep, I can jump up there. I can jump off that. I could, do all these different things. And we make like a list. And then from there, then you kind of weed it down to like, well, these are the top 15 things or whatever. You kind of put them in order of what they are. Then you go and start picking off the like property owners, like who owns the property there, or who do I have to contact to jump off that bridge, right? So the city was heavily involved, the police department was heavily involved, and then the ones that were not state owned or owned by the city, we would have to go to the property owner and say, hey, can we, jump over your thing or do whatever? And then someone would be like, yes, someone would be like, not a chance. So it kind of whittles it down a little bit, but it's kind of fun. Like a good story from urban snowmobiling is we were going to meet with the city, and it was the production company that, like, they're the ones that kind of build out the jumps and get everything kind of set up. And then there's like a film crew. So the production company, they were the ones that were in charge of all that. And we're going into this meeting, and as we're walking into this restaurant, just as we get to the door, he goes, now remember, none of what did he say? He said, none of this is dangerous and you do this all the time or whatever. He said something to that effect. And I looked at him, I'm like, yeah, I jump off buildings and bridges all the time. Got it. So we like went in and had the conversation. It was pretty funny, but fortunately that shoot, it went really well, because once we kind of figured out what the different features were going to be, then like we went down there, like my crew, I have a crew of guys that helped me out up at my shop. We all went down there and like kind of surveyed it. So we knew heights and distances and like what my run-ins are, what my, the length of the jumps, what the elevation, the height, all them different things. We journal all that. And then we go back over the, before winter, before freeze up, and we made replicas of everything. So there were, it was amazing. I actually, at that time, I was still doing freestyle at X Games. So I had my freestyle course, and I had a full urban snowmobiling loop with all the like just about all the features. And I would practice my freestyle and, do my normal freestyle training. And then I would start practicing this loop. And I had it all like one big loop where it would go from, I would backflip up onto like the Capitol platform, which was like a 32-foot step up backflip. So I would flip up onto there. Then I would go and jump over like what were the cars on the parking garage. And then I would go and hit like the ramp at the end when I Supermaned over the big hole. Then I would loop around, and most people didn't realize, but there was a like 200-foot distance jump in the middle of that video, and they shot it real tight, and it showed, you could see like the background was all the skyscrapers and stuff. So you could see that. So a lot of people didn't realize, because they kind of zoomed in so you could see the buildings better. And it was a big jump, but I would tie that into this loop at my house, and I would do laps of this. So I'm doing these features all consecutive into a 200-foot jump. And it was pretty cool. And the fun part was when you're riding that much and you're practicing that much, all that stuff is, I don't want to say second nature, but you're just used to it. So you're not like sketched out at all. Now for me to go do a 200-foot jump, I'd be like, I got to build up to that. Right. Which we did. But at that point, after riding that much, I was like rallying, jumping 200 feet back to back to back, and like high-fiving my buddies. Like, that was pretty cool. So.
Is it different though? Like when you've got the scale set up at home, 200-foot jump, or you're jumping over the ship, right? And you've got that jump distance and ramp and everything set up. But when you actually get on set, what's it do to you as far as Are you that mentally prepared that you can send it, or is it still something you got to get over?
Yeah, so for that video in particular, I had it pretty dialed. Like I practiced a lot, and I was in X Games mode, so I really felt confident. And I have the crew that I had they were great. I trusted them 100%. So I didn't have to worry about the jumps or anything. They just made sure everything was exactly like what I had practiced. So for instance, when I did the backflip up onto that platform next to the Capitol building, I went and hit it. And I mean, it was pretty intimidating because it's it was like 32-foot step up over a concrete wall, right? Or like border, right? So you have to like step up to this. It looks like you land a helicopter up there is what it looked like. And it had a 4-foot wall of like concrete to keep people, as a guardrail. And I had to go up over that and then land in this platform, which was, maybe 25-foot circle. And then it had this barrier of concrete all around it and a walkway going off it. So as long as I hit it straight and I didn't go left or right, I was fine. And as long as I didn't go short, if I went short and I bounced off that concrete, guardrail, I would have fell off and probably, 32-foot drop to the ground, run into the ramp. It would have been a bad day, right? So my thing is like, just don't short it on the first one. So I hit it a little bit hot, and they show it in the video where I go super high and I kind of slap down, and I'm like, okay, that was fine. I'll go back around now and I'll flip it. Cause I knew I hit it fast the first time, and I'm like, I know it's right. And so then I went back and hit it at the right speed and flipped it. And the jump itself is like, it's one of the funnest jumps to hit because it just shoots you to the moon. So I tell them, I say, hey, do you guys need me to do it again? Because like we would do these shots where I'm like driving, like from feature to feature, and they would shoot it like 10 times. So I would be idling at 20 mile an hour driving by, and they'd have this big boom cam off of a car, facing me and stuff. And I'm like, okay, we did that 10 times. Like you had to have got that shot. So when we finally got to like a jump where I was like, I'll gladly hit this 10 times because that's super fun. We do that jump 2 times, and I'm like, do you want me to do it again? And they're like, no, we got it. I'm like, you sure you get another angle? And they're like, nope, that's good. And I was just like, man. So the one fun one, that I actually enjoyed, they're like, that's good. I'm like, all right. So that kind of gives you a gist of like filming. It's very much like racing in the aspect that it's all hurry up and wait. You're waiting for camera crew to get set. You're waiting for, streets to be blocked. You're waiting for the course to be clear. And I would have a radio in my ear and a walkie-talkie, and they would just tell me, all right, 60 seconds. Okay, 15 seconds. And then he would just say, go, go, go. And then I just take off. And that was my cue to go every time. And hopefully at that point, everyone was ready, and then I would go.
That's wicked. Well, I've got a little story relating to that ride. I'm sponsored by a company called Koala Pieces, and they make this accessory called roller skis. And they're a ski. Have you seen them? They flip down on your, and you can drive into parking lots and stuff. So watching your urban snowmobile video, broke it and we can into little clips. And then my son and I went out, and we didn't get permission, and we didn't close any streets, and we drove from we actually faked the ride from my house to in October.
That's awesome. That was great.
It was like your video was the inspiration, and it's like, okay, but I'm the cameraman, I'm the drone operator, and I think it turned out really good. It's gotten a lot of views, but it
awesome.
was, and it looks, I've had so many comments saying about how many pairs of sliders did you use, but we were just literally unloading the sled and do the next.
Yeah, that's the funny thing
on the channel
with
there.
like
Massart says
oh, there you go. You cut out for a minute there. I missed you. But
no problem. Yeah, I seen you were spinning there. So yeah, so we had fun doing that, and it was like all inspired from you.
That's cool. That's super cool. I heard you sunk a sled in the video. That's pretty accurate. Not in the urban snowmobiling one, but the Duluth one, I did sink a sled, and that was quite a story. It was the third day of filming, so we had 8 days scheduled for shooting the Port City video, which was in Duluth, Minnesota, and day 3, what we were going to shoot, which would have been the ending. It ended up being the ending, but when I jumped from barge to barge it was from Minnesota to Wisconsin is what it was. And there was an old train bridge, and there was just a portion that was on land going onto the water. So then we were going to have barge, I think 3 different barges to span that gap of water. And the idea is I was going to jump off the train bridge, and we had a shipping container with some snow on it. So I downsloped that. And then I was going to go, it was supposed to be a 110-foot gap from ramp to landing. And then the next jump, I had a chip shot. I purposely had the second jump be shorter so that if
technical
went
difficulties
wrong,
here. It'll be back on live soon.
No. So then I purposely had.
I'm not sure if it's Levi's connection or my connection, but I can see him and he's frozen up here. He'll be back soon. There you are.
I'm back.
Yeah, you're back. Sorry about that.
No. Let me. I'm gonna try.
Go back and start that story about the sled sinking from the beginning.
Yeah,
there wasn't much shared here.
Okay, so when the idea was I was going to jump from Minnesota to Wisconsin, and there was an old train bridge from the 50s, or it might have been even older than that. But they had taken the old bridge out, and they just left the start of this bridge, which was mostly on land. And I started from on there. I was going to jump onto barge 1. Then it was a 110-foot jump to the second barge. And then after that, I had purposely made it like a chip shot jump. It was only like 50 feet from that second barge to the third one. And then the third one, I would jump from the third barge to land in Wisconsin. And from barge 1 to barge 2, that big gap, the 110-foot jump, that one was, so unfortunately there was current right through that water where we had all these barges, and they were having a really hard time positioning the barges so that they were all straight in line and that they were all at distance. So what ended up happening was we sat there better part of the day waiting for them to get like the tugboats and to move them around and do all of that. And by the time they finally, like, it was probably 4 o'clock, and they're like, we only have maybe an hour of light left. So like, we have the first barge at 90 feet, do you want to go for it, or else we got to scrap it? And I'm like, all right, well, I'll figure it out. Like, it's 20 feet shorter than what I'd been practicing for a month, but I'm like, I'll figure it out. It won't be bad. So I jump off the bridge, downslope the shipping container, and I kind of knuckled it a little bit, and it kind of scrubbed a little speed. So like, I overcompensate and I hit that jump, and instead of like, I kind of defaulted back to what I'd been practicing. So I hit this 90-footer and I jumped like 110-foot distance. And so I completely missed the landing, and I flat land in the middle of the barge. And, it wasn't a big deal. I knew I had that little chip shot right after. So I like headbutt the handlebars. I pop my head up and I look and I'm like, oh, no big deal. Chip shot coming up. So I get into the throttle and the throttle went right to the bar. And I went, oh boy. So my throttle cable came unhooked from the thumb throttle. So I was going so fast, there was no way I was going to be able to stop before the end of the barge. So quickly I go, okay, I'm going to slide the sled sideways and pitch it. And then I'm going to land and stay on the barge. Unfortunately, by the time that happened, I bailed off right into the face of the jump. And, when I hit the jump with my body, it flipped me over the barge or over the edge of the barge. And I dropped like 10 feet on my side to these ice chunks down below. And unfortunately, there's all kinds of ice chunks and open water. And if there was any time I would have liked to have landed in the water, it would have been right then. But unfortunately, I landed right on a big ice chunk and I broke some ribs and got a hip pointer. And then I climb up on a piece of ice, and then the Coast Guard came and got me with a dinghy boat. They were right there waiting just in case something happened. And of course, I jump into the little dinghy boat, and first thing he says, he's on the radio, we got a snowmobiler in the lake. Snowmobile in the lake. And I'm like, no, don't say anything. Because everyone's got police scanners and stuff. So as soon as he said that, then it was on the news. And then, I'm getting phone calls from everybody. And I'm like, I'm okay. So it wasn't ideal, but the sled did go down. It went down. They said 39 feet. It was 39 feet deep right there. So the sled went down there, and I told them, I said, if you scoop it up, like, because they literally, went bobbing like a weighted big hook. It was like it was a lead like pipe, and it had two pieces of rebar that they bent like a hook. And they just started going down there, and they hooked it right through the ski loop, and they pulled it up like a fish. And I told them, I said, if you hook it, get pictures of it as it's coming out of the water, because I want to like do a sequence shot. And then right now I have that sled on my like trophy rack of sleds, but eventually I'm going to hang it like a big fish, like hanging upright, because it's just like such a fun story.
Oh, that's cool. And like, you didn't get hurt landing on the ice?
I broke some ribs and I got a hip pointer. So essentially I couldn't lift my leg for the rest of the week. So getting on the sled was kind of the hard part, because I'd have to put my hand under my leg and like swing it up onto the running board. Like I could do a squat, but I couldn't like, if this is your leg, I couldn't like lift it this way and like put my foot up there. So I would grab it like this, and I would like swing it up on there. And then I could do a squat, but I couldn't lift it. So fortunately I didn't need to lift my leg very much, and then the tough one was I broke my ribs.
When you do these stunts.
What's that?
What kind of safety gear do you wear when you do these stunts?
Usually I got my knee braces on, and I'll have, chest protector, like body armor, and that's and my helmet. That's about it. Usually sometimes I'll run like hip pads, kind of like you would wear. They make like moto ones where they're like a little bit lower profile, but it's similar to like what you have like playing football. Like it reminded me of when I played football. I had like these hip pads and stuff like that. But outside of that, it's knee brace. So I'm kind of good. The only thing that's exposed, I'd say, is my elbows. That would be the only inch, like forearm, but the rest of me is pretty well covered.
Right on. Hey, listen, I'm going to do a roll call here and just see who's in the chat, if you don't mind. Let's have a look and see. Just going back to the beginning, we have Ron Kesslut says, hey, everyone, cool air and snow is a season prep happening. Lepoinski 800R says he's revved up for this show, fellows. I've been watching the clock all day. Let's go. Hello, Levi. And Chris Watson's in the house. Yeah. Ron Castellude, I think I mentioned. Jacob Masser, we had some comments from him already. Wisco Sledhead says, in legendary company here tonight, Mr. LaVallee on the pod. Olive Gardenone says, what's up, everybody? Chris Watson, he's back. He sent me in a comment. He's been making, prepping for the season with a cookout with his buddies already. Patrick and Carrie Shell says, cheers from Sudbury. Uncle Buck says, looking forward to hearing from Levi tonight. Corey Brock's in the house, gives you 2 waves. He says he loves your urban snowmobiling videos. Yeah, Josh Harnett's in there. One Dicey. It's 7:05 p.m. Let's go. I didn't hit go live. We had already started and we were well into it and had to restart that. Renegade X. Smith says, what's happening? Minnesota boy. Sled 519, he's pretty stoked to see Levi on the show. More snowcross content. And there was a question he posed.
But you cut out.
I just froze up there. Riley Reinhardt says the longest backflip video with Andreas Bergmark and you.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Andreas, he's a madman.
Those and yeah, not roll call.
There is one guy on there named Just Fly Low or something, I think it was. He just went off my screen, but he asked if I was wearing FAST.
Yep.
From FXR, which is the flotation assist safety technology. And what's crazy is they made me, so what I usually wear is I'll wear like race gear, like all of the racers wear. So they'll make me a kit like that. And I said, can you make one kit that has FAST built into it? So they did build me a kit that had FAST, and that's what I wore for the barge jumps. And thankfully I did. I didn't really get to utilize it. Like I said, I landed on the ice and I did slide into the water, but I was in full panic mode right off the get. As soon as I went over, I hit the ice, I slid, my little iceberg that I landed on, it tilts, I slide into the water, and I was out of the water back on the next piece of ice, like almost instantly. It's kind of funny to watch the video because I told everyone, I'm like, I was in the water, but I was out of it before I even got wet. And usually, you'd think you go in the water, you think it would all be gushing in your coat and stuff. I got out of the water before my like chest even got wet. So it was like instant that I was out of it. But it was pretty interesting to see. But I did a fast shoot for our channel here maybe 2 winters ago, and I cut a hole in the lake, and I cut a hole in it, and then I let it freeze overnight. So there was just this like little layer of ice, and we happened to get snow that night as well, which was kind of cool because it covered it and you could barely see where the ice was. So I literally just walked, and they're like, okay, just walk right into it. So I just walk right into this ice and knowing it's going to collapse, and I just fall right in the water. And one of the things I thought was really interesting is I'd never been in that situation before, like you would if you were to go down on your sled on a lake or something. But when I went in the water, you actually, I didn't get wet right away. So it wasn't like instant shock. Like I've jumped into cold water before, like wakeboarding, and I've had where you start hyperventilating right away and you have that cold shock, and I didn't have it right away. So I jump in, and the first thing I did in the fast is it floats your legs and your whole body like right up to the top. So I was like laying in there like I was like laying in a hot tub or something, or like I was on a floaty, I was like laying there, and I'm like, this ain't bad. And then I could feel the water start getting in, and it would start like hitting different spots in my body. And then I'm like, oh yeah, that's cold. And you knew right away after it started working its way in, then it got cold, but it wasn't like that instant like cold shock that I was expecting. It was kind of like more gradual. So I was actually quite calm. And then I just laid there in the water, and you were taking video and photo and stuff like that. And it wasn't too bad. But the thing that was nice about the fast was once I spun around and I'm going to get out, it kind of your legs like float up to the top. And the idea is if you're on thin ice, you want to kind of like slither off, because you can't just go up to it like you do getting out of the pool and like push yourself up, because the ice will just keep breaking until it's thick enough. So it kind of allows you to like slither up onto the ice. And then once I got up there, I actually cut the hole about a quarter mile from shore, just so I could like walk back. Cause I was like, well, I just want to see what it's like. And I was actually, by the time I was halfway, I actually was quite comfortable, where I'm like, outside of my boots fill up with water. And I later found out that if you go in, you're supposed to get to a safe ground and like lay on your back so the water can drain out of your boots. And I didn't do that. So my boots were plumb full of water. And then my feet and my fingers are what got cold. So I like pulled my fingers into my gloves and just made fists like this. And then my feet were cold, but the rest of me was quite warm. Like I felt like I could have, like where I actually cut the hole, and I was about a mile from my house down the lake. I went off a buddy's house and did it. And I was halfway tempted to just march to my house just to like make it more realistic, like you were out on a trail or something. And but they were, we were in a video shoot, and they're like, wrap it up, let's get her done. But it was a neat experience just to do it. I definitely don't want to do it I'm glad I did it on purpose, and hopefully that I don't ever have to do it for real.
Yeah, well, I guess preparation is most the key, right?
Yeah, it's
jumping and you get broken ribs or what have you. Does Red Bull give you time to actually make up that shot, or
so
work
for that shot? That was going to be the ending of the video. So it was kind of like I had mentioned, we had 8 days of filming scheduled. So I crashed on the third day, and like I woke up the next day and I felt like a train ran over me. I was like pretty beat up feeling, but his name is Buddy Ramsey's from like the Cleveland area, and he's worked on all these different athletes and stuff over the years. And he was like the on staff kind of paramedic / athletic guy that would fix everyone up. So he went to work on me, and he took it looked like a butter spreader, like at a fancy restaurant. It was like this little like kind of knife looking thing, and he massaged the muscle between my broken ribs, because what happens when you have a broken bone is your muscles will like tense up and like protect the area. So your muscles are like wicked tight, and they're right around my broken ribs. So he would go and he would take this thing and he would massage the muscle next to the rib, and it hurt so bad. And I would just sit there like on my side, like grunting, like, like this. And he would do that long enough until it didn't hurt anymore. And I'm like, that's great. I feel great. Like I'm good to go. And then he worked on my leg. Because like when I woke up, I remember like dragging my one leg like to the kitchen, because we had this like VRBO house, and I like remember like kind of dragging my foot behind me because it was smoked. And he worked on it, and by the end of the day, I was doing lunges and squats, and I said, man, if I can do a lunge, I can jump a snowmobile. That's what I said. So the next day I said, we're back on. So I told the guys at Red Bull, I said, I'm going to go for it. And they said, all right, so game on. So we missed one day, and then we changed kind of the order that we were going to go, because I was supposed to jump at Spirit Mountain at the ski hill, and there was, you know, going to be some bigger jumps, harder landings. So we flopped 2 of the days. One that was more just me driving around the streets and whatnot, because it was a little bit more lower impact. So we did that day, and then, you know, that second day, then we went back to jumping, and I was tender like the rest of that shoot. I remember, like, you know, some of them, I felt some of them pretty good, like the backflip over the train. It was just, you would backflip up onto this, you know, parking lot and just flat land. And I remember I straight aired it and then I flipped it. And when I landed off the flip, it, you know, it was pretty firm landing, and I felt it. I was like, oh, you know, I felt it right in my ribs. And I was like, do you guys need another shot? And they're like, no, I think we got it. I'm like, okay, good. Because that one, I noticed that one.
That's wild. Levi, where's your favorite place to trail ride snowmobiles? Wisco Sledheads asks.
Favorite trail ride? Oh, that's a good question. You know, I've been able to ride in a handful of really cool spots. I really like, you know, it's somewhat close to me, is the North Shore of Superior. Like from Duluth, you just kind of start going east along the shore, and you get over to Lutsen and Toftli and Finland and all that, and it's really good riding over there. I went to, gosh, I just had this conversation. I want to say I was in Maine, I believe, and we stayed at this kind of resort place, if you'd call it, and they had all these cabins on the hill, and they had some really fun trails up and down and winding around. That was a really good ride. The UP is always fun. I actually went to the UP, I think 3 or 4 times last year, and I had a really good time. The problem was there was kind of a lack of snow in the Midwest last year, so everybody was going to the UP, and it was pretty busy when I was there, like early season. As we got later on, like some of the other spots in the Midwest started to get snow, so it probably wasn't quite as busy. But the one time, I was right around the first of the year I went up there, and it was really busy riding.
Do you when you stop, you must get recognized, and it must make for a long day. You don't seem to have a problem meeting fans though. Like, I love you at Heydays because you just take the time to talk to everybody and share your stories and passion for the sport.
Yeah, I mean, I always tell the same story, as I say, like prior to racing professionally and prior to like kind of calling this my job, I did dirt work. I worked for a little excavator guy in town. It was just him and I. So what that means is, you know, he's the operator, I'm the man with the shovel, is what it means. So, you know, I ran skid steer quite a bit. He ended up getting a couple pieces of equipment so we could get both of us running. But I remember putting in, you know, we would put people's sewers in, and we would clear these roads and build roads for people. And there wasn't one time where somebody said, hey, you mind if I get an autograph after we were finished? Or like, could we get a picture? You know, like, my sewer looks great. You know? So I after that, I went, man, if anybody ever wants an autograph, or if they ever want an autograph or a picture, I'll stay there all day, because like it's such an honor, such a privilege to have anybody like wanna, you know, acknowledge you or are excited to meet you. So I kind of made up my mind early that I'm like, I'm not skipping a photo or an autograph.
Is that that's one of the things that I don't know whether I'm froze or you, but that's one of the things that I think really makes you stand out over other super sport athletes, is like your attitude. It's so positive, and you get to live in. Did I get that right? How did that all come about, and what's your philosophy on that?
I mean, to me, I always kind of, I think about, like, I live in a town of 156 people, so I'm a pretty small town guy. It's like where I grew up, and I still live in the area. And my dad was the garbage man around town, so like I always say, I'm the garbage man's son, is what I always say. But I kind of like, I just, I think about, I there's nothing really to hype me up, like as far as like, yeah, I'm pumped that I've been able to do all these cool things. But in a small town, you can't be arrogant, you can't really be a jerk. You got to be nice to everyone, because it's, there's few people, everybody knows what you're doing. So I've always just tried to stay level-headed, and it's fun to be able to live my dream. This is what I dreamed of doing when I was a kid, and it's neat to be able to do it. It's been a lot more work than fourth grade Levi thought when he was writing a report about becoming a professional snowmobile racer. It's been a lot more work than he thought. But in the same breath, when it's something you're passionate about, it's really easy to do the work and to push yourself.
Yeah, right on. Is it, was it 4 years old that you started racing, or when did you start really getting into this?
I started racing when I started doing like radar runs when I was around 10. So I started riding when I was 8, and then when I was 10, they used to do all these like radar runs all over the local towns by us. And Dad was like, put Levi on your sled. He only weighs 60 pounds, he'll get you a couple more mile an hour. So I would be out there, just barely touching the running boards, running everyone's sled. It would be like, I would just jump from my dad's to, once they saw me go on my dad's, he always had like a triple pipe thing. And, I would go zooming down on that. And then, these other guys, I'd be jumping on these other sleds, running them. So that was kind of the start of it. And then when I was 12, I started doing cross country. There was a little cross country series, and I started doing that, which that was kind of a funny story. Is when we showed up to do this cross country race, we go up to sign in, and it's my dad and I, and I was 12 years old. So at that time I was like literally 4.5 feet tall, and we walk up, and it was the owner's wife that was checking people in, and the owner of the series was right behind her. And she said, "Can I help you?" And my dad said, "Yeah, we're here to sign up." And she said, "You and who else?" And he's like, "Well, my son here." As I'm standing next to him, just this little guy. And she goes, "Well, he's too little to race." And my dad said, "I tell you what," because then the owner came kind of to back her up. And my dad said, "I tell you what, you go out on your sled, and if Levi isn't right on your tail or past you by the end of the first lap, we'll pack up and go home." And the guy was like, he knew my dad was going to put up a fight to do this. So he said, "I tell you what, we'll make a waiver. We don't even have a juniors class. We don't have any of that. We'll make a waiver. He can do this one race, and we'll call it a day." So they had like kind of limited classes, and it was buddy races. So the guy I was riding with was like in his 20s. And so we were in the like semi-pro class, and we ended up getting second in the semi-pro one. And the owner came up, and he like shook my hand after the race, and he said, "You can come race with us whenever you want." So then we started doing these like little local cross country races. And then 2 years after that, when I was 14, I went to, my dad asked, he's like, "Do you want to go to Duluth and race snowcross?" And I'm thinking in my head, like, we had been going to Duluth snowcross as spectators for the last few years. And I went, like, am I qualified to do that? And he's like, "Well, I don't know." And back then it was like in the newspaper, like they'd have like Minnesota Snowmobiler or something had it. It had like a Duluth insert. And he's like, "I don't know. It says junior 14, 15. You're 14. So we called the thing, sign up, and show up at Duluth. And I'm like, I can't even believe I'm racing here. And I was so nervous the night. I was up the whole night before the race. I was sick to my stomach. I ended up throwing up at the hotel. And I get to the race because I couldn't believe that I was like at the big show doing this. And I ended up getting 4th place in the junior 14-15. And then we didn't race. We raced cross country the rest of the year. And then we did the last regional and then Lake Geneva at the end of the snowcross season. And I won the regional in the junior classes. And then we went to Lake Geneva, the grand finale, the last national of the year. And I won the junior class there. And then from that point forward, we were kind of hooked on snowcross and did that the rest of the time.
That's wild. When did snowcross transition into, the Red Bull stunts and X Games and that type of thing?
So when I started, I turned pro in snowcross in 2003, going into the 2003 model year. I went to Duluth. I was a semi-pro, and that year, Curtis Crapo and Sean Crapo were teammates on Team Industries, and they both got hurt at Duluth. And I remember they used to do the X Games qualifier for snowcross on the day before, like the Saturday, Sunday show. So on Friday, they had the X Games qualifier. And back then, it was how you would qualify is anybody that was outside the top 5 in the final at X Games had to qualify to get into it. So, you were talking 6 through the end of the field had to re-qualify. And there I was a semi-pro, like trying to qualify. And I ended up finishing 4th in the X Games qualifier. So I qualified for X Games. Then we had semi-pro open and semi-pro stock. And in semi-pro open, I jumped under yellow. I didn't see a yellow flag and I jumped. So they DQ'd me in one of the heat races. So I didn't make the final because back then we had 3 qualifiers and like semi-pro class would have like 10 heats. So you pretty much had to get 1, 1, 2 to make it into the final. And once I got DQ'd, I was out. So I didn't make it into the final there. And then I went in stock and I got taken out in the first turn. I come into the first turn and got rear-ended and rolled over. So I had to go to the LCQ and I led the whole LCQ. And then in the last turn of the last lap, I got cleaned out from the inside. So I didn't make either semi-pro final. And then both the Crapo boys got hurt. And I remember Tom Rager Sr., he pulled me into his office on the next Monday or whenever we went back to the shop. And he said, and I'm thinking he's going to be mad because I didn't qualify for either semi-pro final. And he goes, I think we'd like to bump you up to the pro class. And I'm like, why didn't make it in either semi-pro class? Like, you think I'm ready for that? And he goes, well, both the Crapo boys got hurt. And Team Industry needs a pro rider out on the track. So we'd like to bump you up if you're interested. And I said, yeah, I'm game. So they kind of looked at it. They're like, well, you're already behind in points. So it's a perfect time to just jump you up. So they bumped me up to the pro class and I went and did the first regional and I got second in one of the pro classes there. And then everyone that remembers those early years of my snowcross career, I was pretty wild. I thought that more throttle meant more fast, and it resulted in a lot of running into people and jumping on people and wrecking myself. I mean, I was a mess out there, and it took me 3 years, 03, 04. I blew my knee out in the first heat race in 05. So it took me 3 seasons before I started to calm down. And then 2006, I remember going into that thing with just stay on your sled and don't run into anyone is kind of was the idea. And then it started clicking and I started using my brake a lot more. And I ended up getting my first 2 pro wins, at pro national wins. And, I finished the year out with a few podiums in a row. So things started coming around. And then from there, I was still, my job was to race snowcross. And then going into the 2008 season, I get a call from X Games, and they said, "Hey, you know, we're going to come out with this new discipline called Speed and Style, and if you can show, you know, if you can send us a video of you doing some tricks, you can be entered in this new discipline." So I called Red Bull right away, and I said, you know, because it's 2007, fall of 2007, and I'm like, where do you get a freestyle ramp, right? There's like, you can't go on the internet and say freestyle ramp, you know, because like everyone's hand making these. I don't know what the design is. So I just called them because I knew they had done, they at that point, they had already had done a couple different events, Red Bull Fuel and Fury, which was freestyle, of course. So I'm like, where do I get a ramp, or where do I get the design so I can get one made? And they just said, well, I told them the story, and they're like, no worries, we'll get one made and shipped out to you. And I'm like, awesome. So they sent a ramp out to me. I built a landing, and then I just started practicing. I layered the landing in wood chips, and I had a little pond, and I just sit there rallying. And I remember the goal was for Speed and Style, you needed 3 tricks. So I went through the previous year X Games gold medalist, Chris Brandt. I went through his run, and I just went, I'm just going to try to pick off as many of his tricks as I can. Well, I practiced on wood chips for about a month, and I learned all of his tricks. So I learned like previous year X Games gold medalist run, and I went, holy buckets, I wonder if I could qualify for freestyle too. So they had a freestyle qualifier in Billings, Montana, and I raced the first snowcross at Duluth, and I was the highest finishing Polaris. I finished second behind Tucker. And then the next week I went into freestyle practice again. And I had told, I don't know who I told, but I told someone that I was going to try my first backflip on Sunday. And I got a call from Tom Rager Sr., the race director, who was like kind of the dad figure. Cause like over in Wausau at the race department, there's all these like young 20-year-old kids running around, and we're all like rebellious little buggers, you know. And he's like the father figure, like keeping us all in check. So I'm back home at my compound, and I get a call, and he leaves me a voicemail. He says, Levi, this is Tom. I heard a dirty rumor. You better call me back. And I was like, oh man, busted. He's on to me. So I call him back, and because like one of the things when I first asked if I could do Speed and Style, he's like, I agree to it as long as you don't do any backflips. That was like what he said. Yeah. Well, I told him, I said, oh yeah, no backflips, knowing that a week later I had a trip to Justin Hoyer, who he had the only snowmobile foam pit in the country, I think probably in the world. And I had already had a planned trip to go there and learn how to backflip. And I said, no backflips. So then, a month or month and a half go by, and then I'm trying to do my first backflip to snow. And then I get this call from Tom on Friday. And so I call him back, and I just told him, I said, Tom, I think I need a backflip to win. Like, I don't think I can win without a backflip. And he goes, absolutely not. And I said, no, I really think I can make it. And he goes, you know how much trouble you, me, and Tim Bender are going to get in if you get hurt? Because Tim Bender was the crew chief for Team Industries at that time.
Right on.
Yeah, and I just said, I'm like, I know, but I really think I can make it. So he ended up saying, he said, if you have any doubt whatsoever, don't do it. And of course, I'm full of doubt because you're going to get upside down on a snowmobile. And I said, no, I think I got it. So then 2 days later, I ended up doing my first backflip to snow. I did 1 on Sunday, 3 on Monday, and 5 on Tuesday. And then we left for the X Games qualifier on Wednesday and drove out to Billings and ended up winning the qualifier. And then, a little over a month later, we won Freestyle, Speed and Style, and Male Athlete of the X Games. So after we did that, then Tom Rager said, yeah, that was probably a pretty good idea. You did that. So it ended up working out.
Well, it reshaped X Games from that point forward, don't you think?
I think what it did was the freestyle guys, like I took a racer mentality to freestyle. So I went there and I was very disciplined in my approach to practice and how I was going to learn things and go about it. And I think it really pushed the freestyle guys to like, we gotta really dedicate ourselves to it. And I think that was the thing that changed once I got there is I just, knowing, because like up to that point, I've been racing against Tucker Hibbert, right? So you're racing against Blair Morgan, Tucker Hibbert, and I'm like watching videos every morning when I would eat breakfast before I go to the gym. I would watch the same video over and over, just analyzing like, what are they doing? Like, why? Like, I had everything, like the way they would approach the corners, how they would set up wider, how they would jump in. I mean, everything they did, I just would watch it over and over. And I'm like, I got to figure out something because these guys are stupid fast. So that kind of approach, once I took that to freestyle, it allowed me to like get caught up really quick and learn all these tricks and really push myself in that one. And I think the freestyle guys up to that point maybe didn't, put that as much effort into it. But as soon as we had that success, they most certainly started pushing after that.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Massart says, how was it racing against Tucker and Blair Morgan?
So my first year as a pro, it was Tucker's last year before he like retired. Like he had that brief retirement for a handful of years when he went motocross and supercross racing. So it was his last year. And Blair Morgan, I mean, these two are, Tucker was in his prime from day one till the end. And Blair was right in the thick of his prime. And I remember my goal was to not get lapped by those guys. And I remember at Canterbury, I finished 5th place. And Blair Morgan was right on my rear bumper. And I was like they were so fast. It was just crazy. And, I did that. So for those first handful of years in the pro class, it was predominantly Blair Morgan. And then Tucker came back later. And, that's when after Tucker went and did motocross and supercross, I think he learned a tremendous amount of stuff from motocross, the way they prepare. And, he already was super well prepared already prior to that. And then once he came back, it was like a whole nother level. And that guy it was incredible to watch Tucker. And, most times I would see him twice. I'd see him at the beginning of the race and I'd see him when he lapped me. And it was like, it was like wild to do. But my one claim to fame in regards to Blair and Tucker was 2008, and it was in Brainerd, Minnesota, which is like about an hour from where I live. And I passed both of them. I don't know if they followed the plug or if a ski was falling off or what, but I passed both of them and I won the race. And I have one picture. There's one picture where I'm on the top of the podium and it's Tucker and Blair on each side of me. And because I'm so short, we're all like level at the top. Top of the box. I'm still like not taller or nothing, but that was my one picture. That was the only time that I can remember passing them both and beating them. And, so that was, every once in a while things work out, the stars align, I guess.
That is awesome. Robert Reinhardt says, Levi is simply great for snowmobiling. I'm a Skidoo guy, and you talked to Riley and I for another 20 minutes at Heydays about sleds and that Scorpion you had as a little kid.
Yeah, I had so my very first, like the first sled that I rode was my dad. So my parents got back into snowmobiling in 1990. So they rode snowmobile in the 70s. And then during the 80s, that's when my dad, he bought the garbage business from his uncle and moved up north where we live now. And he was starting the business. And then, he had my sister and I, or my parents had my sister and I. So family business. So they didn't ride in the 80s. And then 1990, he got back into it. And he got an Indy 500 and an Indy Trail for my mom. And then we would ride, with them. I was small enough, I'd sit in front of him. After sitting in front of him for a little bit, and I'd been riding four-wheelers at that point for 3-4 years. So I knew how to ride, and Dad would let me ride every once in a while when I was in front of him. So he goes, "Hey, we should get the old Scorpion." He had 2 Scorpions in the woods, a Stinger and a little whip. And he goes, "We should get those going. You could ride one of those." And I said, "That'd be great." So he gets this sled going, this old Scorpion, and we do our first ride. Dad and I were going to ride to town. I'm 7 years old. And, we'd ride through the woods and then get in the ditch, and you'd have to cross the road. It was just a county road, but paved road. And fortunately, it wasn't very busy. So when I go to cross the road, I come, and Dad always said, you got to carry speed to get up the hill, up onto the, out of the ditch. So I kind of give her a little mustard to get up there. And when I get to the top, I hit the brakes, and there's no brakes. So I just go whoomp right across. I had planned on stopping at the top, look left and right, and then go. I didn't have any brakes. So I just went whoop right across the road. And I'm like, I didn't look, I didn't do anything. So I got to the other side, and my dad's looking at me, and I'm like, I don't have any brakes. I'm like, I could have got hit by a truck. And I told him, I said, boy, and that was the first time riding it by myself. And I said, I don't know about the snowmobile thing. I said, if I got to ride that thing, I don't think I want to ride anymore. And Dad's so Dad goes, all right, you can ride my sled. So I get on his new Indy 500, and he gets on the old Scorpion. And all it was that it just had a cable brake. So the cable came unhooked, and it just fell off. And so Dad just rehooked it and took off. And so I rode his new Indy 500, which was like a dream compared to that old 70 Scorpion. But in the next year, then he found a used Indy 400 for me at Heydays. And that was my first real snowmobile, I'd say.
That's Indy 400s were awesome. I had a buddy that had one.
Yeah. Go right to 80. And that was it. 80. And
yeah,
you just cruise. My dad, he always, we'd race every time we hit the lake. He had that Indy 500. I had my 400. The only time I beat him, I got a big run off the lake. And I hit the lake, and I went zooming by him, and he'd always be looking back like this at me. So I'm looking back at him, and all of a sudden I see him let off, and I was like, I got him. I beat him, Well, as soon as I look back, here's a plowed road perpendicular to the way we're going. So I hit this plowed road wide open, 80 mile an hour. And I'm like, I'm this little kid, and I Superman off this thing, and I crash. And I'm laying in the snow, and I couldn't have been, I was between 8 and 10, right? So I'm laying in the snow, and I'm crying, and my mom gets to me, because she would always ride behind me. So my mom gets to me, and my dad loops around, because he saw me. I jumped right in front of him. So they're both sitting there, and I'm yelling. I'm like, my boot, my boot. And my mom's like, Larry, I think he broke his back. He keeps talking about his back. And he's like, no. My dad's like, it's not his back. He lost his boot. His boot's over there. So he goes and gets my boot, and then I was back in the game.
Honestly, then, from a little child to today.
Yeah, that was my first world record attempt.
Yeah, Sled 519's son is heavily into snowcross. He just got into it a few years ago, and he says, here's a question for Levi. What's the health of snowcross right now? As a team owner, you have a decent insight into the current health of the sport. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say what's tough right now is the pro class is hurting for people, and it's kind of it's an interesting thing because the younger numbers, like the younger classes, are doing really well. One of the like how I look at it is there's a big jump from pro light to pro, and that's kind of where it's a tough part because you really have to dedicate. Like when you go from semi pro or pro light to pro, it's like a big jump in amount of effort and amount of work that goes into it. And the other part of that is there's a limited amount of spots, like factory rides or like teams for the most part when you get to that pro class. And I think that's one of the hard parts for like the pros is like, these riders will get to that level, and then to get into that pro class, it's kind of like you're looking for one of the teams to go to, or you're looking for help that way. And that is like one of the tough parts is like in the old days, I would say, there wasn't as many like rides, like team rides like that. There were more people doing it independently in the pro class. And that has kind of gone away in the past, say 10 years or more, where, you'll see independent riders in the pro class. So that, as far as the pro class, the guys that are in there are extremely talented, and it's hard for, a guy without top level support to be able to compete against them. So I think the pro classes maybe struggle, but it's nice to see that the younger classes, there's like a lot of good numbers in the younger classes, which hopefully that'll translate into more pros in the future.
Yeah, very cool. I'm glad to hear that it's still going strong. That's for sure. Corey Brock asks, how many sleds do you own?
Probably.
How many sleds do you not want to tell your wife you own?
No, so I have quite a few snowmobiles just because I've kept a lot of, I call them trophy sleds from the different projects and different races and stuff like over the years. So I have like close to 20 trophy sleds, and then I have like my trail sleds that I ride each year, and then I have I usually keep a race sled or two around, and then I have a bunch of vintage ones. So I mean, I'd say it's like probably in the 40s as far as like snowmobiles go, if not more, because the other part too is I have like Tri-5 sleds, like, so I have like community ones for our charity race that we do. So I have like those that people will ride to. So there's a lot of snowmobiles at my compound, I'll say.
I love that. Rob Hilditch, Rob the oil guy, he's in the chat, and he's been bugging me to go to Tri-5, and we almost went this April. Was it March or April?
It was in April. This year it'll be in March. I believe it's March 20th, and we're doing it at ERX this year. So that will be fun. We did the first public one at ERX back in the day, and we're going to be going back to ERX this year. So we're really excited about that. But I saw you had asked about Tim Bender, and he's a great guy. Tim is, I look back at my career and kind of reflect on the different people that have had, big impacts in it and have helped. And Tim is one of those guys. And, I'm grateful that my first pro team was with Tim, and, it started that relationship. And then, he went to Henches, and we went to Henches as well. And then after Henches, when we started Team LEVI, we still were getting Tim's engines and parts and stuff from him, because he was one of the best builders when it comes to the engines and sleds. That guy eats, sleep, and breathe it, and it showed. Like, the stuff that he came out with was phenomenal. But the cool part is I've stayed friends with him. We went down to Lake of the Ozarks, him and his wife Kathy, and my wife Kristen, and then my partner in the race team, Glenn Kafka, his wife. We all went down to Lake of the Ozarks, and Glenn has a place down there. So we went down there for a few days and got to hang out this last, not this summer, the summer before. So it's fun to talk the old race stories with him.
Right on. Just Fly Low says, where is ERX?
ERX is in Elk River, Minnesota. It's just north of Elk River. So from Minneapolis, it's about an hour from Minneapolis, hour north.
Nice. Have you ever been Sled 519 wants to know, have you ever get riding out west in the mountains?
I do. I haven't for probably 3 or 4 years now. For a while, I was able to go out after, we'll say, March. I used to be able to go out either end of March, first part of April. But then once we started doing Tri-5 or charity race, it would fall at that same time frame. So between that and then the Snowcross series has bumped to later dates now too. So their last race is the first weekend in April. So it kind of pushes me into end of April when I could go. And I haven't been able to get out and play. I will say this, I did get to go to Alaska, not this winter, the previous winter when Andreas Bergmark did the massive, I think it was the biggest backcountry backflip. I mean, it was so wild. So I did get to ride in Alaska there, but we were out there filming and whatnot for his deal. So I didn't get to go play too much, but it's always fun, especially Alaska. Alaska is it's pretty incredible riding up there.
Just a couple more comments here. Dan Smith, how about that fire truck snowmobile? Awesome. That was cool.
The fire truck snowmobile, I mean, it's unreal. It's unreal. The gentleman that built it for the Tri-5, I remember when I saw it, I pulled up at the Tri-5 and I saw it in the distance and I went, oh my goodness, is there a fire over there? Because the ladder goes up and extends out. And here it's one of the guys, it's one of the teams. And I mean, they're awesome. So the guys that are building it or that built it, they had skidoos under it. So they had an MXZ, one on the front, one on the back. And they called me this, they hit me up this summer and said, hey, do you want this thing? Otherwise we're going to tear it apart because it's taking up my garage, right? Because it's huge. It's 25 feet long or something. And I said, yeah, I absolutely want it. But I'm how much do you want for it? And I said two things. Well, how much do you want? And then I need how much would it cost? How much would it cost for me to have you convert it to Polarises?
Oh, right on.
So they ended up, I said, how much would, I said, I'll buy it, but I want you to convert it to Polarises. So I found two old Polaris Edge chassis sleds, and they're converting it. They sent me a picture. So I've got the truck is done, and now they're building the back of it with the rear steer, which is a little more involved. So they're building that, but they said they'd have it to me by mid-December. So you'll see the fire truck in action here. I don't know who I can get to jump it with me, but I'll have to figure that out.
That is awesome. Well, here you go. Maybe you should get Chris Brandt to do it. Riley Reinhardt asks, have you ever been to Jackson Hole Hill Climb and ever thought about trying it with Chris Brandt?
So I went to Jackson Hole in 2008. So I'm flying. I was flying high at that time. We had, that was my first year doing freestyle and speed and style at X Games. Won, 2 gold medals. I was doing well in snowcross. I won I think I won a race and some podiums that year. and they called me and they're like, hey, do you want to try hill climbing? I said, yeah, I'd love to. And in my head, I'm thinking, it's just riding a snowmobile up a hill. So I'm like, I could totally do that. I get out there, and what was funny was that was like, I think it was Keith Curtis's like breakthrough year. Like he was like kind of unknown for the most part. And I remember riding with him and he just crushed it. But anyway, I go out there and I was sharing the late Rick Ward's sled. So Rick Ward, you know, he was gracious enough to let me ride his sled. So I was in 2 classes. We had his number, I think it was 7X and 108 on the side. And I take off. I remember the first time I took off, and the first little bit's kind of like, it's almost like cross country. You're just winding for a little bit as you're getting steeper. Then it gets a little bit steeper. And I remember I started climbing, and the first gate, I looked over and it was like a 4-foot hole trench. And I looked in there and I'm like, well, I'm not going there. So I drove right past it where everyone was turning, and I went up around it. Well, the gate was down the hill then. So I had to go down the hill and I couldn't make the turn. So I went right off through the trees, and I'm like in the trees, ducking and diving, and I get it back on the course. I run it down to the bottom. And if anyone that met Rick Ward, like anyone that knows Rick Ward, the late Rick Ward, he was very calm and, you know, super chill guy. And I get down to him and he's like, he just said, I'd appreciate it if you didn't wreck the sled, because I got to ride it too. And I was like, I'm so sorry, man. I totally didn't mean to do that. So the next one, I made it to the first catwalk, which is like, we were in qualifying then. And I made it, like, you would go to the first catwalk and whatever your time was like, that's how they determine if you do the full rip later. And I missed it by like 1/10 of a second. I missed the cut by 1/10 of a second, which I was actually okay with, because knowing Rick was going to race that same sled from the first catwalk on is when it got, like, that's where it got really steep and really nasty. So I was like, it's probably a good thing that I'm not going any further than the first catwalk.
That's awesome. Hey, listen, we got lots of stories. I'm going to give you a break right now. I'm going to run a sponsor ad, and then you want to get in to see some fan photos?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, let's do that. I'll just quickly do that. And if you want to grab a drink of water, I got two short little ads I gotta post up here, but here we go. Fan photos are brought to you by Fast Track Snowmobile Traction. This season, quit sliding sideways on the ice and losing races to your buddies. A Fast Track stud kit will help you with improved braking and give you the arm-ripping acceleration you crave. I put over 3,000 clicks last season on my Renegade 850, and I'll tell you, these studs exceeded my expectations. Not one broken stud, my idle wheels still look like new, and they hooked up like I was on rails in the twisties, inspiring confidence every ride. Fast Track Top Gun kits are the highest rated stud kit at 4.9 stars with over 230 reviews. The studs are heat treated stainless, so they are strong and they don't rust. The kit is lighter, easier on the track, and has a lifetime warranty against breaking. Each kit comes with a track-specific template for complete balance with over double the scratch lines from stock templates. All listeners, when purchasing a stud kit, can get a free install kit, a $30 value. Visit fasttrack.co, add both products to the cart, and use the coupon code SNOW at the checkout. That's fasttrac.co. Tired of dealing with worn-out carbides and scratchers that just won't scratch your itch? You deserve better. It's time to upgrade your ride with Koala Pieces. Koala Pieces is the leader in specialized snowmobile accessories, bringing you innovative products that solve the everyday problems we all face on the trails. From their durable, long-lasting carbides, Trailblazer ice scratchers, to their ingenious roller ski, Koala Pieces has redefined quality and performance. Have a taste of their specialized carbides at koalapieces.com and take your snowmobile to the next level. There we go. All right. Yeah. So Chris Watson, thank you so much for the super chat, super sticker, the $50. Really appreciate that. Getting into this, he says it looks like it's going to be a good start to the season. We had a junk food night to kick off the season, and I have a new member to the family, but he didn't send me photos, so I don't know what that's all about. Maybe he can send me photos for next week. And just some house cleaning from last week. Trail Link had a few more photos showing that that awesome little accessory that we talked about on last week's show. There's a Trail Link Go in red and white to match the backcountry sled that he had it on, and showing different mounting and that you can use this Trail Link Go on. Very cool product, Levi. Check out that podcast from last week. It's a buddy tracking system that lets you notify and track your buddies and notify an entire group. It's got a 10-kilometer open ice and 1 to 2 kilometers in trees range, and it's you can mesh it with up to 20 group members.
Nice,
it's very cool. Yeah, we love it. It's got like the battery lasts forever on them on this little Go model. It's the same batteries that you find in a lot of power tools like Milwaukee and DeWalt use. It's lasts forever, and the display is super bright. So, nice. You're out on the trails and connection matters, and that's where the Trail Link comes in. The off-grid buddy tracking system keeps your group connected even when cell service doesn't. And quickly find and notify your crew if you need help with long-range performance up to 10 kilometers on open ice and 1 to 2 kilometers in the trees. It's built on a mesh network that links up to 20 riders with a long-lasting battery and a bright display. Trail Link keeps you connected when it matters most. No one is left behind. So, and we've got that I actually showed the wrong slide there. We actually have a coupon code if anyone's interested in checking it out. And it is promo code SNOWBRATS at traillink.ca, trailink.ca, and that'll get you 25% off the system. So pretty cool. So, Massart 850 said he got the new gauge relocation kit on. It's very nice for shorter riders, Levi, if you're ever going to switch over to do. And he said, and he says, probably the second coolest wrap you've ever seen. Levi can explain that one, real wood.
Yeah, that one was pretty cool. It was my buddy, he owns a company called Woodchuck, and they do all this like these different wood products and stuff, and he's like, hey, I can make you like a design with the wood and stuff. And I was like, really? So he made that for me, and it was an old XCR that I had. It was actually new at the time, but it was pretty cool setup, all real wood, and it had like adhesive on the back, and I think it's like the only snowmobile to ever have wood on the side. So I kind of felt like I was riding an old station wagon with the wood sides.
That's very cool. And Massart says he took some inspiration from you, and he made his vintage way better. Nice.
I like that. Yeah. So I made a leafer set of CNA Pro skis for my TXL. I have a 1980 TXL that I run at the Tri-5. And, I went out and rode the sled out in the field to begin with. And I'm like, wow, this thing is it's pretty sketchy, and I hope to, get it off the ground. So I redid it and did, leaf spring CNA Pro setup similar to that. And then I asked Fox Shocks if they could build me some little shocks for it. So they made me some Fox Shocks on the front of it. And the funny thing was, at the time, the Tri-5, our charity race, the Tri-5 was supposed to be $500 sled, 500cc max, 500 laps is what it was originally. That was what the Tri-5 was. So when I remember when I showed up for the first time with my TXL with CNA Pro skis and Fox Shocks on the front end, they're like, what? One side of your skis doesn't even cost more than $500, And I'm like, well, I said, as long as you get it cleared with the board, and I'm the board, so I approved it. But being the race is a judged race on creativity and fun, and two, like my rule is I can't win the race, so I'm just there having fun anyway. So, but it was pretty fun. It's changed a lot. The Dry 5 now is much different than the original rules, because I found out right away that 500 laps was near impossible on those old sleds, and $500 budget limited you a lot, and 500cc max was pretty tough to find sleds for.
Yeah, nice. Sled 519, here's a couple shots from Grant, his son's last snowcross season, and he's looking forward to another big winter behind the bars.
Nice.
Just bring back some memory. Yeah, look at him sending it here.
That's so good. The bummer is I missed out on all the little sleds. So I didn't, when I was growing up, they had like the kitty cat, and then they had the, what was the little Yamaha?
Snow Scoot?
They had Snow Scoot. That's right. So yeah. I remember when Dad was looking for snowmobiles back in the day, we went to the one dealer, and it was a Yamaha dealer, and they had a Snow Scoot there, and I'm like, that would be perfect. And Dad's like, no, he wouldn't go for it. And one of the things too is after we rode the first year, I was like, you should get that thing. And he's like, well, you're not going to be able to ride down the trails and keep up. So that's when he decided on getting a Indy 400 for me. But I really would have liked to have had, that kind of, the 200s are great, to be able to get your feet wet riding. And, a lot of those guys are getting pretty rowdy on them, jumping them and whatnot. So it's fun to watch.
That's pretty cool. You got any advice for a little guy like Grant that's maybe just getting into this sport or thinking about getting into it?
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of kids just they're just really hard on themselves, if they're not winning, if they're not, if things go wrong. And I think the biggest piece of advice would be is just keep it fun. Like our motto at Team LEVI is work hard, be positive, have fun. And we have it on the door inside the semi, so we see it every time you walk out the door. And it's a good reminder, because one of the things in my career is I had success, and then you get to a point where it's like you make it to the next level, and then you're starting at the bottom. There's always going to be older kids that are faster, and it's kind of it's hard to accept, especially if you've had success winning. It's hard to go and take that step back and be humbled and then work your way back up. But if you just enjoy it and you just say, I just love riding, I just want to do better, I'm going to do the best I can every time I'm out there, and I'm just going to enjoy it. That positive attitude is what, ultimately helped me the most throughout my career. And just kind of looking at adversity and going, learn from it. Like, why did this happen? What can I learn from this? How can I make it better? And then just go out there and work to make it better, and all with a good attitude. And that just kind of, allowed me to continue to climb until I made it in the pro class. And then, like I said, I get there and I'm like, I made it. My childhood dream, I'm a professional racer. And, then you have the next goal is like, well, I want to win a race. And then here I am with two of the greatest snowcrossers of all time that I'm racing against. And I'm like, you went from like this super high up, I made it, to this is impossible. Like, how do you beat these guys? And I just kept chipping away at it, and it didn't happen much. But, we were able to have a successful race career, which was good. But that all led to, what everyone knows me for most, the jumps and projects and X Games and things like that. So positive attitude, work hard, have fun.
I love that. I love it. This photo was sent in from Aaron Ferry, and he says here's a photo when I rode with Levi in Maine back in 2012.
Maine.
I'm the one. Yeah, I'm
That's
the one
where he's
standing on his
talking.
right. Yeah.
That's where I remember riding there, because we rode there before, it was in January, first part of January. And I remember I was like, I didn't, like, I wanted to go until it got to January, and January was always my month to get prepared for X Games. And I was behind the ball because I was hurt 2 years before that. I didn't do freestyle, so I was behind already. And then I'm like, shoot, now I have to leave to go do this ride. So I was kind of sweating it. And then I got out there, and it was one of the coolest trips. Awesome riding, great people. And it was probably good for me just to take my mind off of stressing about freestyle for a weekend or a few days. And then I went back and ended up just kind of having a really good practice set, went to X Games, and that year we won freestyle and speed and style again. Right there. Yeah, we won freestyle and speed and style in that same year. So it was kind of like, a blessing maybe that I had the chance to go out there and just kind of clear my mind and have a good time with some good people.
Yeah, that's awesome. Masser says, what made Levi get back on the sled after the world record attempt crash?
Just knowing, the reason I went back and tried to jump again was I just knew we could do it. And that was probably the biggest bummer for me after I crashed. And that's what I told the folks from Red Bull, because they would call me each week after the crash. After I got home, they would call and just check on me to make sure everything was going all right. And I think it was maybe a month after I crashed, I just told them, I said, I'm just bummed that we didn't get to show the world what we could do. And, because at that point, we had broke the record by 60 feet. The previous record was 301. We jumped 361, and everything was working. We had the right setup. It was we just had the wrong engine. And that ultimately was the reason for the crash. So I told, the Red Bull guy, I said, I'm just bummed we weren't able to show the world what we could do. And he paused for a minute, and he goes, so would you want to do it again? And without even skipping a beat, I'm like, absolutely. So I say that. So then that's when that next year, then Robbie Madison and myself, we ended up doing the record jump, the Rebel New Year No Limits. And it was very storybook because, we not only came back and did it, but it was the first time in history anything jumped over 400 feet. So it was a cool thing to think, like, up to that point, motorcycles had always held the cake as far as the longest jumping machine. And we got to that big milestone of 400 feet, and we ended up jumping 406 feet in practice, like it was December 13th, I think, was our last day of practice. And then on New Year's Eve night, we jumped 412 feet. So in storybook fashion, the biggest jump was on the big stage.
That is awesome. I love the positive attitude of I'm doing it. I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a great shot you sent in.
I like that. That was when the 9R XCR came out, and we were out in Yellowstone shooting out there, and it's fun to get out and play. Especially where we get to go out on the new sleds before they come out and whatnot. Some of the stuff is it's really neat. Like, for instance, Dynamics, when Dynamics came out, you know, being able to ride that before everyone was pretty cool, because you realize you realize how, like, how good it works, and how, to me, it just makes people, you know, it just takes your level of riding up. And I had a conversation with a woman about it, and she said, I feel so much better cornering, because the Dynamics, especially, you know, when you go into the turn, it like makes that outside shock stiffer, so you don't have the body roll, and it's just doing everything for you when you want it to be done. And that's always fun. But, you know, the 9R XCR, that was kind of a right up my alley, that sled. So I had a lot of fun playing around out there on that.
That's wicked. I love the colors of that one too, man. That's excellent. So nice. There's your mug shot there. We all know what you look like though, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, fun stuff. We've got a lot. This one's obviously real big. The distance jump that was a pretty big highlight of my career, to be able to, you know, it's one thing doing the jump, but just to be able to showcase our sport on such a big stage. You know, when Red Bull was doing the Red Bull New Year No Limits on ESPN, it was such a cool thing. I was fortunate enough to go to Matto's distance jump in Vegas in I think that was 2007, and then he did the Arc de Triomphe in 2008, I believe it was, or maybe I'm off a year. And then in 2000, yeah, I think you're right. I'm off 1 year. So he, I didn't get to see the Arc de Triomphe, which would have been cool to see that step up, step down. But then I went to Travis's, and that would have been 2009 going into 2010. And then, you know, at that point, I had attempted the double backflip at X Games and rotated it. So I had a lot of confidence. And I remember talking to Red Bull, and I said, I've never done any kind of distance jumps before, but I think I could do it. Right. I'd gladly do it. So they reached out to me then and said, you still want to do a distance jump? And I said, you bet. And they said, well, the kicker is we'd like you to do it in San Diego. And I was like, San Diego? I'm like, last I checked, there ain't a lot of snow there. And they're like, yeah, you think you could do it? And at that point, I'd been doing freestyle, so I knew we could AstroTurf it, and, you know, we could make it happen. So that's kind of how it progressed. But it was crazy. That was 300. It was a 300-foot water gap, and I jumped 112 feet down the landing. So needless to say, the landing was pretty firm by the time I touched down.
Not much of a transition. You can see in this photo there where they've stepped the bike and the sled, and how much further and higher you've gone than the motocross bike. That's incredible on a sled that weighs, you know, arguably double the weight, right?
So that jump, it was the only time in my life where, like, if there's a GoPro on the center of my sled, and there's a video on YouTube you can watch, and if you slow it down and you go frame by frame, you can see what I'm talking about. But when I came up to the ramp, I came up like square, but at the bottom of the transition from you know, the takeoff to where the ramp started, when I hit the ramp, I kind of rolled onto my left foot, and my weight kind of shifted to the left. So I like leaned like this. And I remember I kind of I started turning to the right, and you can watch, if you watch I had a piece of AstroTurf down the middle for traction, and you can see the sled like going over a little bit, and it's real brief, but you'll see as I come off, I'd lean the sled to the left, and it was the first time I've ever felt it, but my sled like it felt like it like glided over, and then I like flattened it out, and then it just flew perfectly straight. But it felt like I felt like it was a kite. Like it had enough speed where I like kind of like shifted over. It was so weird. Such a weird sensation. But the thing that was nerve-wracking was usually when you pull it over like that, you end up getting crooked in the air. But when I leaned it over, I got over, and it's like I got back on track, and the thing just flew perfectly straight then. And I remember coming up on the landing, and they had 380, 390, 400, 410. They had them all marked out on the landing. And I remember watching the numbers go by, and I saw 400 go by, and how you would lose a lot of distance because they measure off what touches down first. So you would lose a lot of distance if you tailed into it. And like tailing into it is how you like do big jumps. You always like kind of land back end and let it slap down. It takes some of the energy out of it, so your landing is hard. But I knew if I kept it up, like if I kept it sucked up, I would gain extra distance. So I kind of kept it up longer than I would have liked, and it resulted in a longer distance. But if you have to see it in slow-mo. Like when I land and I'm like completely like elbows down, face on the bars, like arched back, just folded into the sled. And it did it so fast. I like hit the bars and I rebounded back to where my arms were like fully straight. My little fancy camera here is looking at all my notes here.
Yeah, there you go. It's still down.
Hey, I'm here, buddy. Did it follow me up?
I was wondering if Kristen was running the camera tonight or what. I noticed it moving earlier.
Yeah, I bought this, like, there you go. I bought this camera because I like forever I would do these Skypes and I would have to pull my laptop out, and I have like a monitor. So I bought this one. I bought like I don't know what it's called, Insta360, and it does like it recognizes hand movement. So every once in a while it'll like start and stop because I talk with my hands so much. So it'll like shut off or turn on, and then it follows me anywhere I go. So if I start moving around, it follows me off screen and whatnot.
That's cool. That's cool. Speaking of Kristen, like when I go to the shows like Heydays and your family is there, and it seems to be, especially your wife, a big part of the sport is do they always like a stunt like this? Are they there participating or helping with you, or are they what's the involvement in planning with your family? How do you keep that in check?
So when we did distance jump, that was pre-kids by a couple of years, and Kristen, she was obviously there. We had been together for what would have been maybe close to 10 years at that point. And what she did there was she was on the takeoff side before the jump, and then they had a boat and they like shuttled her over to the landing side for like after the jump. So I remember, it was half hour before jump time. She like came in and, she prayed for me, and then we kind of kissed goodbye and then in hopes that she'd see me on the other side. And fortunately it went well. But Kristen, she's been a big part of, my whole career as far as my pro career and whatnot. And, I remember when we started the race team in 2009, model year 2010, I remember starting the race team, and I was defending Snowcross champion. And I went to the first race in Duluth, and, I'm like, yeah, I want to start my own team so we can, make all the decisions. And, if I want to white sled, I can have a white sled. And if I wanted like the freedom of getting my own sponsors and doing all that stuff. So I found out in a hurry that it's a lot of work, especially trying to train at a top level. So I remember I'm like booking hotels and getting travel all situated while I'm training and practicing and doing all this stuff. I go to the first race and I go to sign in, and they obviously greet me. Hey, Levi, what's up? They knew who I was and whatnot. And they look at the list and they're like, well, you're not on the list. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm not on the list? I'm like the defending champion. And they're like, well, did you sign up? And I'm like, no. Like so I totally wasn't signed up for the race even. So I had to do all that. So then that next, fortunately we had a window where we didn't have a race. And I told Kristen, she worked graphic design at that time. And I said, you got to quit your job first of the year and come work for me, because like I wasn't even signed up for the race. So she came and she started working for the team and working for me. And that's what she's done ever since. And, back then it was funny because, we were young and overwhelmed with this new workload of me as a athlete and having the race team, and it was real busy. And now it's like, I just keep stacking more and more stuff on her. And she's just like, you gotta be kidding me, and the kids and stuff, when the kids came, it was fun when Liv and Lavin came. We try to take them to a lot of the events and take them to a lot of this stuff, because it's pretty fun for them to see it and get to experience that.
Is it something you want to encourage the kids to do that? Are you going to let them find their own flow and support them if they do or don't?
Yeah, I haven't really pushed snowmobiling or dirt biking or anything like that on them. I just, my main like focus, I would say, with the kids is just to find something they're passionate about. Snowmobiling, it was something that I fell in love with when I was a little kid, and I just couldn't get enough of it. And I just wanted to ride all the time. And I've been able to do so much just from riding my snowmobile, and it's just brought me so much joy. I just hope that they can find that snowmobiling that they love. And the fun thing is they're getting older now, where they can we can start going and trail riding, and they can ride their own sled. Cause it's you can only ride shotgun with somebody snowmobiling for so long before you're like, yeah, I don't know if I like this as much. I mean, the first few years, Lavin, half the time he'd be falling asleep we had the little toasty tot handlebars, and he'd be head down sleeping. So I actually have a 1990 Indy 400, the same snowmobile that I started on. I bought one probably 5 years ago, just out of nostalgia, just to have. And I'm like, well, shoot, you're 9 years old. I started when I was 8. This will be perfect for you. So he's pretty fired up this winter to go riding with me. So I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's great. They're lucky to have a mentor and a father like you to help steer them in the right direction, right? You know what mistakes you made and what,
That's a good way to put it. I was going to say, I don't know if I'm the right guy to point you in the right direction, but I can tell you the mistakes I've made and how to avoid them. But yeah, it's been fun. This last year, I had a lot of fun getting out riding and, ripping around like that. That sled was a boost that we did up. That was it was really fun on the trail. I really liked that. And actually Polaris built a jump sled for me out of a 9R XCR.
Wow.
And it was great. So they reinforced it and made it where it was jumpable. So it was actually the sled that I used to jump over the Formula One car in Minneapolis. And, you know, I flat landed. That jump it was 140 feet to flat on asphalt. And, you know, it ate it right up. So I had that sled, and I was shooting a video. Ironically, I was going to shoot this video called like how to jump a snowmobile. Okay. And the first shot was I call it my safety 100-footer. I had this 100-foot like step up tabletop. So it goes ramp, angles up, tabletop, downslope. And it's 100 feet from ramp to takeoff or ramp to landing. And it, you know, it's pretty, I don't want to say easy, but it's one that I can like do pretty straightforward. So we go out to shoot the intro. I was going to shoot the intro first, which I was going to come wide open across the field. And then I was going to slow down and hit the ramp and jump over and land. And I forgot I have a mic in my helmet, and I forgot what I was going to say. It was that sled right there. And I forgot what I was going to say. So I'm thinking about, you know, what I'm supposed to say. And I'm coming in like 20 mile an hour faster. I was supposed to hit the ramp at 50, and I'm coming in at 70, and totally forget. I'm thinking about what I'm supposed to say, not thinking about the jump. I hit this jump at 70, and it was supposed to go 100 feet. I went 100, and I just measured it this last week. I went over 175 feet to flat off a 10, it's at least a 10-foot tall ramp. And I broke they're called transverse processes. Like they're the wings on your vertebrae that your muscles attached to. And I broke 2 of them in my lower back. And then I broke a couple ribs as well. And it wasn't good, we'll say. So I would, needless to say, I didn't finish that video. It took me out for about, I was riding after a few weeks, but I wasn't like riding to my normal level until a couple months. And by that time it was end of season. So, but there'll be that. I'm going to come out with that video this winter. And it, like, the jump itself was it was big. I was just up there looking at it today, and I'm grateful that I'm kicking still. It was a big jump to miss.
That's insane. And this one that we're looking at here, the F1, you only had one shot to do this one, right?
Yeah. Funny story about that. So it's David Coulthard is the driver. So he was the original Red Bull Formula One driver when they first started their Formula One team. And he goes and does, like, this event was called Red Bull Show Run. So they had the Formula One cars, one of their older Formula One cars. And then they had Andrew Carlson and his off-road truck, and Scott Speed in a rally car, and Aaron Colton on his motorcycle. And then there were like this crazy hopped up Mustang and some other machines. But the idea is they go there and they block off like 4 or 5 blocks, and then they just speed back and forth doing burnouts and stuff like that. And it, like, for the Minneapolis one, there were like over 50,000 people there on these like 5 blocks going down both sides. And they asked me, Red Bull was like, do you want to come to it? And I'm like, absolutely, I want to see this. And then it was like, hey, would you like to be a pit reporter and like go and talk to fans in the crowd? And I said, sure, I can do that. I've never really done it, but I'm sure I can figure it out. And then it was like probably 6 weeks before it, and they're like, so we kind of want to give it a little more Minnesota flavor. Like, could you like do something on your snowmobile? And I said, no. They said, we want to give it a Minnesota flavor because it was in Minneapolis. And they're like, and we thought, what's more Minnesota than snowmobiles and Levi LaVallee? And I said, sure. I said, well, what are my limitations? And they said, well, it's 30 feet wide, and the guys are racing back and forth. And I said, well, I can like have wheel skis and blow some donuts, but like I could do a jump. And they're like, problem is you can't have a landing because the cars have to be able to get by it. And I said, well, how tall is a Formula One car? And they're like, well, it's only 3 feet tall. And I said, well, I could probably just jump over it and flatland. So, and they're like, really? So they talked to the Formula One team and they said, we need a 5 foot tall, 50 foot wide safe zone for him to blow a donut. And I said, well, like I should be able to get over that. So I made like these high jump meters with a ribbon at 6 foot. And then I put it at 75 feet. And I started testing. So I tested, I like sent the video to the guys so they could send it to Formula One. But David was like, he's like, I don't know about this whole snowmobile jumping over me. Cause he's like already done it. He's already been through his whole career, lived through it. He's just doing these demos. He's like, I don't think I want a snowmobile landing on top of me and going that way. So he goes, I'd like to see it in person. So we set the ramp up the morning of that, and I did like a test jump the morning of, and I went like 125 feet. And he goes, oh yeah, you're gonna easily clear over me. So then we did the jump for the show, and I ended up jumping 140 feet over him. And after, he's like, shoot, we could have had 2 cars blowing donuts, and you would have still cleared us.
That's next year.
Yeah.
Did the F1 guy, Rob, the oil guy, says, did the F1 guy really want to drive your snowmobile?
He looked at it, but I think after seeing me jumping and whatnot, and I mean, the wheel skis, they don't turn very well on asphalt. They will turn, but I think with his F1 background, I think he wanted something that turned a little bit better.
Yeah. Here's a good question. Chris Watson asks, is what type of track are you using for this type of stunt?
That's actually a really good question. So we talked about asphalt track. I had an asphalt track that I tested with for the distance jump back in the day, just for speed tests on asphalt. But for this, what we ended up doing, and this is actually a great story. So the guys in Roseau, they built the sled, and they took a 1.25 inch track, I think it was, and they went out in the parking lot at Roseau and held it off the ground and did a burnout with it until it like burned the lugs, until the lugs were like bent over. And so it actually had really good traction on the asphalt, and it still had enough lug to kind of like hook up, because I had on the ramp, I ended up putting caliber grip glides on it so that it would kind of give me a little traction, and it hooked up really good. But I would have loved to have seen the snowmobile burnout in the parking lot. That would have been awesome.
Oh man. Just simply nutty, man. Oh, this is one of my favorite ones too. The 360. Oh, you can't see it here. Boom.
Oh, the loop. Yeah.
The loop. Yeah.
The loop was it's like, it was something I wanted to do for a long time. That loop it's identical to the one they used for the 50th anniversary, for Polaris's 50th anniversary in 2004. And I saw it. I went to Roseau and saw them do it. You know, it was pretty amazing to watch. And at that time, I just raced snowmobile, so I was like, man, it was way out of my wheelhouse to even think about it. But I'm like, I would so like to do that someday. And it was quite an opportunity to have Red Bull Canada reach out to me and say, hey, like, we'd like you to do something up here. And I said, well, what are you thinking? And they said, have you ever thought about doing a loop? And I'm like, only for about 16 years. So I told them, and they're like, awesome. So we went into that whole project, like trying to figure that out. And I said, you know, the easiest way to do this, because it was really tight on time. We didn't have we didn't get the final go ahead until almost August. And to be able to I like to like practice everything beforehand. And I'm like, well, we got to like get something built and do it. And they originally wanted to do it on ice, which would have been really cool. But I had anticipated us doing this like a lot of times, like many times. And I just kept thinking, I'm like, man, if we build it out of ice, it's kind of a one and done. So we ended up going with the steel one. And because we were short on time, I said, we could just make, you know, we could just have the guys that built the Polaris one just build one for us. So James Bergman was his name. He built the 50th anniversary one. So he ended up building it. And the interesting thing about the loop is I would say it's underappreciated by people because it's really easy to understand. They just go, oh yeah, you just drive in it and come out the other side. But the hard thing for me was when I did double backflip, I did one flip into the foam pit, I did 1.5 and I would throw it, and eventually I get to where I did 2. So you can build up to it. Distance jump, you jump 100 feet, 200, 300, 400. This, there's no halfway. There's no way to build up to it. You just literally, like I drove up to where it starts getting steeper. That's as best you can practice. So I drove up it, and then we drug the sled backwards off the thing. I did that like maybe once, and I did a bunch of speed tests next to it. And then you just say, I guess I'll go for it. Like there's no way to practice, no way to prepare. You just say, okay, I'm ready now. And you go. And like, that was really unique because I've always been such a believer in practice and preparation. And I'm like, I can't really do anything to prepare for this. So that first time going into it, it was pretty nerve-wracking. And they told me it's almost 7 Gs where you can see where the Red Bull sun is. Right there where it goes to steep or it goes to vert. The ramp is like progressive, so it's like mellower and then it gets steeper for a radius and like a tighter radius, and then it flattens out coming out. And they said when you hit from that mellower angle to the steeper one, about where it goes vert, they said it's close to 7 Gs when you hit there. And they were telling me stories, the guys from Polaris, the older guys at Polaris, about the first loop. And they said like the first attempts, the guys would headbutt the handlebars and they'd have bloody noses and getting beat up on it. So I was like, I thought, well, if I have high handlebars and kind of think like a bench press so I can like resist, I thought that would be a good approach. But it didn't work. I still headbutted the handlebars, and the GoPro from that loop, it's got a dent right in the screen on the front of it for me headbutting the brake lever or something.
Holy cow. Well, that's the thing I was going to say. You must feel the compression. Like it
yeah. You collapse right into it. And even I just posted the video, like the onboard, the POV, and you can see as soon as I hit that top part, it's just a violent like head forward. And by the time I get my head back up, I was coming out of it. It was so fast. You end up hitting it at, they said about 40 is where you want to be. And if you hit it faster, you're obviously going to hit your head harder. And if you go too slow, you know, you can all guess what happens then.
Yeah. It would be gravity right now on that photo.
Yeah. I didn't want to figure that. I didn't want to find out what that was like. That's for sure.
That's insane. Oh, that's easy. Yeah.
Whoop, you broke up.
Or do you have any, what's your favorite memories of your career to date?
Favorite memories of my career. I mean, the big ones were distance jump. That was a cool experience. The double flip was one that will always stand out simply because where I was at in my kind of my career. I really was, I had success the previous year winning gold medals in freestyle and speed and style male at the X Games. And I was like, I'm going to the moon. I'm just going big. And as soon as I won that freestyle, I'm like, I'm doing a double flip next year. So I took the winnings from X Games and built a foam pit and started training for that. And it was an interesting time because at that point in my life, I was fully committed to doing this, double backflip and making it happen. And at that point, I heard a really interesting thing just in the last couple of weeks. They say when you don't have much to lose, you're willing to do whatever. And at that point, I didn't maybe think I had much to lose. So I was fully willing to go down with the ship. And after seeing how high I went on the double backflip, that obviously wouldn't have turned out very well if it wouldn't have gone to plan. And it went for the most part to plan, but I overshot the landing by a bunch and like kind of close to flat landed, and it spit me off the side. But that double flip was something I'll never forget. And having that much I don't want to say anxiety, but that much fear to kind of control was something else. And then the one that I was really excited about, that I kind of my whole dream was in the beginning, was to become a professional racer, and to win the championship in 2009 was really big to me. But the thing that put it into perspective was that same year that we won the championship is when we did the double flip at X Games. And I remember going to went to a dealer appearance that spring, and this guy came up to me and he goes, "Man, that double backflip was crazy." He said, "When did you stop racing?" And I said, "I won the championship this year, man." Because in my head I was like, that was the ultimate. And that reach of X Games and stuff, like it really, he obviously saw that, and he's like, "Shoot, I didn't even know you still race." So at that point, it was kind of a transition. The next year I raced, but I came into it injured, and then all these opportunities started coming, with the distance jumps and urban snowmobiling and all that, and it kind of changed my focus where my head was at. So I raced snowcross through 14, and it was the last year I was, I wasn't, my head wasn't in the snowcross game. And that's where I said, yep, that's enough. If I'm not going to do this right, I don't want to do it at all.
Yeah. Snowcross seems like you open yourself up to some random accidents that can happen, but it seems like now you have a really methodical thinking, a way you plan a stunt. So, I mean, it's dangerous, don't get me wrong, but it looks dangerous, but it seems like you have it figured out. Is that right?
Yeah. A lot of people will say, like, "I can't believe you do that stuff," or "It's so dangerous," in which there is a lot of danger in what we do, but how you prepare for it, you're kind of preparing in a manner so that it takes as much of the variables out of it. So you try to like plan for when it's go time. You've tested in the safest manner to be able to do a stunt like that. And repetition is obviously makes it easier, but in some situations, if it's really big, you know, you want to get where you know what to do, but you don't want to do it too many times. And like distance jumping was an example of that. We distance jumped, and up to that point, like freestyle, it's repetition. Distance jumping, every time you line up, it could be the last. And
right.
So we didn't do a lot of testing. It was as minimal amount of jumps as we could do to get to the distance and get to what we needed to get to. And that was it. And that was one of the things that was so scary about the distance jump was there were two parts. One, we didn't do a lot of jumps, so it never felt like, oh, it's just another jump. And two, my jumps were always at least 15 minutes apart. So I would do my jump, then they would cool the sled down, bolt check it, check the engine, check the suspension, you know, which was great. They would check everything, right. But I never could get in a rhythm. Like it was never like send. It was like jump, and then I'd be cold again, jump, you know, so every jump was just as scary as the last. It was like what it turned into. And don't get me wrong, they're all scary. Like, you know, you start jumping at 100 mile an hour plus, it gets your attention. Let's say that.
Have you turned down any jumps? Like, have you had some that Red Bull have presented and you went, no way, right? Like,
no, they've turned down a good one that they turned down. I had a really good idea. I wanted to jump over the Statue of Liberty, and I thought, because after I started doing, like, the distance jump was actually where I had this big light bulb moment, because when Matto and I jumped together, they originally had a stagger, so he was in front because Matto was going for 400 feet and I jumped 361 the year before. So the idea was he'd be in the front, so he doesn't, like, if we cross, we don't run into each other. So that was the original stagger. So the first thing we do is we line us up side by side, and they just do a hole shot. Let's see, like, how you guys line up. So we take off, and it looked like he stalled his bike. I just was like, whoa, gone. And he had a Joe Gibbs Racing 450, like factory Yamaha motor. So his bike was silly fast. And I just blew the doors off of him. And wow. And I just looked at it and I was like, I didn't think there was that much difference. I mean, granted, I had like this 800 fuel injected mod. I mean, it was crazy, but I didn't realize how hard snowmobiles pull in comparison to a dirt bike. You know, I've done a lot of hole shots on dirt bikes and I thought they pulled hard. So it kind of, I had this light bulb moment, like snowmobiles, like you can get up to speed really fast, you know? So like when we did that distance jump, Matto, he had 500 more feet of run-in and a 50-foot roll-in to get up to speed. And I was like, I asked him after I saw the 50-foot roll-in, I went, like, could I get some sort of roll-in? And they gave me like a 10-foot platform and plywooded it, like just straight. His was like this big quarter pipe. It was crazy looking. But regardless, I learned like snowmobiles accelerate fast. So what that means is we can do jumps with short run-in that are like of significance. And you put a little roll in, you got a whole another 10 mile an hour or better. So I said we could do a roll in on the island there where the Statue of Liberty is, because it's not very big, but I could do a quick like roll in to a jump and just jump right up through her crown, right over the top, and land on the other side. And so Red Bull, I told them about it, and then they like looked into it, and they're like, so it was a hard no from the government, because it's like one of the nation's like biggest monuments, so they're like, absolutely not. If you run into the Statue of Liberty on live TV, like that would not go over. Yeah. So that one I got turned down on, but
that's wild. You're talk about big stunts and injuries and things like that. How important is training and like, do you have a workout regimen that you follow strictly, and how are you training to avoid or minimize your injuries?
Yeah, like from racing and stuff, I always trained pretty hard, and that really helped me through racing and through freestyle. And now at this point, it's kind of a maintenance program. As you get older, it's just trying to stay one, limber enough, because things start tightening up, and trying to, keep your flexibility and muscle from going away. Right. So I have a daily routine that I do, and it just kind of keeps me going. One of the things that's changed is I have to do a lot more. I have to warm up more than the old days, because things don't move as much if I don't warm up. So
it's called getting old, Levi.
Yeah, my elbows, like probably from all the hard landings and stuff. If I don't like warm up my elbows, I'll like strain them or do something to them, and I usually can tell after, like say I go mountain riding, for instance, and you're pulling and kind of leaning and tugging a lot. After day one, I can feel them. By day 3, my elbows are smoked. So if I don't warm them up, and if I don't warm up my knees, they both let me know that they're not 25 anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, that's getting. How old are you now?
I turned 43 in August.
Nice. Like, do you have a retirement in mind, or are you just keep going till your body won't let you?
So I've always said this, I'll do age appropriate projects and age appropriate stuff. So I just kind of look at like where my level is at, and like obviously there's no more 400-foot jumps or double backflips in my future, but there's still a lot that I feel I'm capable of. And the thing that's fun at this point is it's trying to figure out creative ways to go about things, because sometimes they have as much or more impact as a double backflip or something going super duper huge. So it's fun. I really enjoy just being able to do these things that we get to do, and all the people and whatnot that we get to work with is really a neat thing. And I've done a lot more trail riding and crossover riding and things like that, which has been fun, because it's kind of gone full circle for me. I started off trail riding with my family, and we did all these racing and jumps and stuff like that, and now I'm like back to like trail riding the majority of the winter. So it's been really fun to go back to that original passion and be able to enjoy it with a lot better understanding of what's going on with my sled and what to do on the trails and ditches and such.
Do you do your own maintenance, or do you have that background, like, or do you just rely on your mechanics?
No, like, so all our race mechanics are all in Wausau, Wisconsin area. So it's about 6 hours from where I live. So all the maintenance stuff, for the most part, I do that. Sometimes there's a guy in town here that I'll send sleds into him just out of time savings, because it gets busy. The winters are real busy from just about, heydays on. it's pretty busy between going to shows and getting things ready and testing, and it gets pretty hectic at times. And then there's also right through holidays, we've got Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, all like, and it gets really busy because there's family, everything, there's different family gatherings and stuff you got to make time for. And so everything is like, this time of the year gets really busy for me between running around and family get-togethers and such.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Couple of last questions. I really thank you for this, buddy. Like, this has been incredible. What a great show. Levi, Corey Brock asked, how did you enjoy the Cochrane, Ontario, Canada trip?
That was a lot of fun. It's funny you bring that up because I was just watching the video that we did on that, because I was telling my wife, there was like, I was running around there was like a little hill on kind of a turn, and I was like wheeling kind of around this turn, and it was actually really awesome. And I told her, I said that was like one of the coolest feelings, because I was racing around this turn, and it was probably like a 50-mile-an-hour like wheelie as I'm turning, and I had to show her. So I just watched the video this morning to find it. But no, it was a really good time up there, and great people. That's one of the things about snowmobiling is, I say this to people all the time, is like, if you're a snowmobiler, you're a friend of mine, because the snowmobile community is it's just made of so many good people. And that's held true most everywhere I've gone. It's good people, and I really enjoy being part of that sport, and especially going to Cochrane it was special to be able to go up there and experience that, and just meet all those people. I really enjoy people that are passionate about snowmobiling, because you can feel that passion, and it, and it's so easy to just jam with them. You start talking, a lot of people remember the 90s, and that's what I grew up in. So we start talking old sleds and different places they rode and racing. And so there's a lot of different things that I can relate to them about, and I really enjoy that.
That's awesome. Well, thank you again. Rob the Oil Guy says, great interview. The Motorsport Channel says, great guy, great show. Ron Kessler says, the work smarter, not harder phase has arrived. He was talking about.
Very true. That's very true.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I really do thank you. This has been an epic show, and I mean, you know how hard we've worked to get you on here, and it's I hope you had a good time, and I look forward to seeing you and chatting. And now we'll be able to put faces to our names at Heydays and all the shows that we run into each other, and away we go.
For sure, it was great. I actually enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun. It's always fun talking about the old stories and stuff, and you did a great job digging up all the stuff, and it was great seeing all the people watching and following along. I love seeing all the questions that they had. That was great.
Yeah, it's a neat format, and I knew you'd gel with it. Just I didn't really have to do any work. I just let you run wild. So
Far from that. The biggest problem is, once you get me talking, it's hard to shut me up.
I know. We had to drag the guys out of the booth, out of your booth at Heydays, because they would have sat there all afternoon and listened to you.
That's funny.
But no, I really thank you for your time tonight, and all the best this season. Stay safe, and make sure you keep having a good time with it too. That's
heck yeah.
That's the most important part, right?
For sure. You make it to Minnesota, look me up. We'll go riding.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely on the bucket list this year for sure. Thanks again.
I don't have Skidoos for you, but I got a Polaris for you if you need when you come down.
Hey, no, I'd gladly. And the Rob the Oil guy, he said he's dragging me to try 5. So
Yeah.
we'll see. Yeah. I'll need
Good
an old
time.
relic. I'll need an old relic to ride there for sure.
You bet.
Thanks, buddy.
You take care.
It's a journey for